Hello and welcome back to the podcast, All the War They Want. I am joined here by Jeff Engle and Elizabeth Goodwin. I will let you guys introduce yourselves. Jeffrey, you can go first.
So I'm Jeff Engle, CEO of First Quadrant Services and the chairman and president of Conquest Cyber.
Elizabeth Goodwin, Director of Project Management for CBRE in Nashville.
And I'm Carmen Brooks, your host for today. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me here. Elizabeth, so can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do for a living?
Sure. So my background, I grew up in Middle Tennessee. My dad was a contractor, so it was in the world of construction. And he wanted me to be anything but a contractor. And of course, I went to school for everything involving the built environment because I loved it so much. So architecture, design, civil engineering, construction management, undergrad at UT, and my master's at Vanderbilt here in Nashville. And then worked in construction for about 10 years and switched over 3 years to project management at CBRE. And I lead a team of over 20 people, almost 30 people now. We're growing. Nashville is a hot market right now.
That it is.
And I work with brokers and developers thinking about projects and what's new for Nashville. And it's really exciting time. And it's all about the vertical expansions of Nashville.
I was going to say, so you've been here for a while, right?
Yeah. So my whole life, and then besides living in Knoxville. But I travel a lot.
You've seen the change grow in Nashville, right? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So I can remember with my dad being in construction, going to the edge of Cool Springs Boulevard, which now Jeff knows because he's moved here. And my dad stopped and he said, we're going to get out of the car. So we got out of the car and we looked out over a cliff and he said, all of this was just sold. It was all farmland. He said, in 5 years, it's going to be a mall. It's going to be all developed and it's never going to look the same. And that was a memory. I need to look at when that actually was, but when I was a kid. And so that was kind of my first moment of, oh, it's never going to look the same. Right. And then my first job when I was in undergrad was the Music City Center, which is a huge 365,000 square foot Music City Center. So it's a convention center and parking garage and all the things. And in a bad part of Nashville, and now it's all grown up around it. And I remember the same thing. The mayor was like, well, this is going to change Nashville. This one building is going to change Nashville. And then the Omni came. Now we have the W, the additions coming all around it, all the office buildings. So you've kind of seen it from kind of a sleepier town and where people didn't hang out downtown to now everybody's working downtown, living downtown, hanging out downtown.
You ever ask your dad why he didn't want you to go into the same industry?
Oh, yeah. The men.
Yeah. So that's really what, the focus is of today's episode, knowing yourself. Like you knew that. I'm not going to assume it was the men that made you want to come into it.
Definitely not.
But the industry, the fact that you're around it, the fact that the conventional wisdom was don't do it, right? Mm-hmm. From somebody as significant as your father. What is it about you that you learned that ultimately led you to where you're at today?
Well, I used to draw all the time. So designs, buildings, it was really the 3D environment. I understood it more so than most people. My dad had drawings out on our dining room table all the time, doing takeoffs and bids and things like that. And my dad and I have a great relationship. So it wasn't that I was defying him. It was like I almost wanted to be more like him. So that's why I was always interested in it. And then I just loved it and I was good at it. So I went to undergrad and was great at it. And then when I got out, I realized it was the construction side that was the fun part. Like doing the drawings is great, but you do it for a 2-year project and then it's over. And then you do another set of drawings. Whereas the construction, you get to watch it happen. And even from the fire in the hole, you explode the parking lot, and then it becomes the Graduate Hotel in downtown Nashville. That's so cool. You get to watch it happen. And so it wasn't like a defiance thing. It was more like, this is what I wanted to do, so this is what I'm going to do. And it's not that I didn't care what my dad thought, but
yeah, it's an industry where the tangible connection between an idea and reality is something that happens pretty rapidly.
Right.
Yeah, that's something that I've loved about building businesses. And in my background, in special operations, taking down terrorist networks, there is a connectivity between the idea of what you want to do and the ability to execute it, and then to see the result of that a lot of people I don't think ever experience, in many industries. For me, that's a hugely impactful thing. And I, even see it kind of like raising kids. The first time you see your kid throw a spiral,
right?
You're like that. I made that. That is, an extension of me. Do you have that same feeling about the projects that you take on and what you see come to fruition?
Yes, absolutely. It is almost. It's not a baby. Now I have kids, so I actually know what it is like to have.
Well, I'm a dad. It's dads and mom, very different relationship with the kids. I'm like, it could be a house, or it's next Tom Brady. Either way.
But I do have that attachment to certain projects for sure, especially the ground up projects where I'm really involved with the client too, and the client relies on me, and I've helped them find the land, and then we're thinking about who's going to be there and what that tenant's going to want, and having some buy-in. Even if it's just, I think you guys should put music in the lobby, and they weren't going to do it, and then I get to go to the grand opening. There's music in the lobby, and I get this feeling, I had something to do with that. Which is really cool.
Which little background for everybody listening. This is actually how Jeff and I met Elizabeth. She was working on the office that we just built. Conquest new office here in Nashville. So that's connection there and the parallel to that. So one point in Jeff's book, I don't know if have you read Jeff's book yet? You haven't yet. Okay. So in his book, he talks about at some point, everybody gets beat, right? Has there been a time in your life where you've just been completely beat
down?
Yep.
So I don't have a specific story, but I will say that I can share. I should say that. I don't have a specific story I can share. But there are certain moments where I've thought, why in the world are they putting me in charge of this? So, for instance, I'm 34, and I'm the youngest or the second youngest person on my team of almost 30 people. And one of the only females. We're changing that, but one of the only females. And I've had moments where I've gone toe-to-toe with people, and it's been really hard, and I've spent weeks working on something, and then it doesn't go the way that I want it to go. And I've had those moments where I've thought, why in the world did they put me in charge of this? Why did a man put me in charge of this? And I have to sit back and think there's a reason that I'm here, and I can do it. And they wouldn't have put me in charge of it if they didn't think that I could do it. And I'm in this room. I've had moments where I'm like, why am I in this room? Why am I in this room with all these successful men? And I have to tell myself, I would not be in this room if they didn't think that I should be in this room. So it's not really a story, but it's just moments.
So is that what keeps you, fighting every day?
A little bit. I mean, I'm fighting for other people, but I also love it. Yeah. And I don't mind going toe-to-toe with people and being who I am and being like, yes, I'm the only woman in here, and let me show you why it's important for me to be in here. And the other thing about it is that I love that people listen to me because I'm the only woman in the room. So if I'm in let's say there's 20 people, and they're all dudes, and some of them are on their cell phones. They're not listening. But if I talk, they're going to listen. And I just have to be careful about what I say and when I say it, so that it's not like I'm not trying too hard, which I think a lot of guys, they don't have to worry about that. But I do, because I want to be invited back, and I want other women to have a seat at the table too.
Yeah, so it's really not a story. It's the story. Right? It's the experience of yourself and other women who are in this position where it's kind of, it's not kind of, it is common understanding that a lot of industries, they're male dominated, and ultimately they suffer from it. One of my perspectives is that I want our organization, our company, to look like the country that we serve, because if it doesn't, then the diversity of perspective that has made us the great kind of beacon of hope and freedom that we are, will be diminished in our everyday operation.
Right.
But without examples, right? Nobody knows what to do. It's almost like, you saw your father as an example. You didn't take what he said. You watched what he did. Mm-hmm. Right. And I believe that down to my bones, that it doesn't matter what you say. It matters what you do, because that's what people see and that's what they'll follow. So the role that you play in taking ownership of that and going into those rooms and being confident in it, and also having those moments where you fail, right? Or you make a call and it doesn't work out. They need to see that too, because they're going to have those moments, and they don't need an example of perfection, right?
Right.
They need an example of a human that is able to do it, that has those moments.
Absolutely.
So it's a balance on how much vulnerability you share, but always, whether you realize it or not, people are watching you, and that's probably the toughest part of my job, right?
Right.
But I am kind of I'm the middle-aged white male in my job, like everybody else. So it's different when you have a company versus you have 50+% of society, looking at you for that example.
Right.
So I assume you'd also have to approach situations in a really unconventional way too, right? You can't just go by the book, because the book hasn't been written in a lot of these aspects. Can you speak to a time on that where you've done something completely unconventional and it actually worked out for the best?
Y'all want a good story?
Yes.
So this happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had a client who is not local to Nashville, and the project was supposed to be due on a Friday, and he wanted it done on Wednesday. And it didn't get done until Friday. And so Thursday, he chewed out in an uncomfortable situation, the project manager who reports to me and the project manager for the contractor. And he had been somewhat on the line all throughout the project. Not very nice, sending snarky emails, and chewed him out, cussing, all the things. And then it was a Friday, and so that night he said, we're going to have a meeting every night over the weekend because I want to inconvenience you as much as you've inconvenienced me. So, of course, I get on the call on the Friday, which he was not expecting, and then he canceled the rest of the meetings that weekend. And then Monday, he's still being inappropriate to the employee that reports to me. And I told her Friday, I told her over the weekend, I told her Monday, you let me know when you're ready for me to take you off the project, which is almost finished, but I'll wrap it up because this is not good for you. This is not a good working environment. So Monday, after a text message that he sent, she comes to me, she said, I want you to take me off the project. So I said, done. I canceled all my afternoon meetings. I called my boss. I said, I need you to tell me you're not going to fire me. I won't cuss the guy out. I'll be totally respectful. I need you to not fire me. He said, you cuss him out. Go. I mean, then my boss was, of course, like, you let him have it. Do whatever you need to do. We're not going to fire you. Don't worry about it. So I walk into this guy's office. I'm standing there, body language, very aggressive towards him. And he's, kind of hiding behind his computer. And I said, we need to talk. And he said, well, I have a meeting in 1 minute. I said, I'll wait. And I stood there. And he was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'll cancel my meeting. So he canceled his meeting. And then he's like, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, I'm taking this project manager off of the project. And he said, okay. So then he thinks that it's because the project's bad. So then he kind of backpedals and he's like, these are all the things. And I say, no, I'm taking her off the project because of the dynamic with you. And the dude sits down in his chair. He starts sweating. He's red. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to handle it. I think it was like me coming, toe to toe with him essentially. Right. And I thought he was going to get mad and be like, F you, get out of here. We're never hiring y'all again. And he was like, oh my gosh, I respect you for doing this. You're a good manager. It was like the opposite reaction I thought that he was going to have. He was very understanding. I know, it was wild. What? And even since that, so I've been working with him, to wrap up the project, to do the punch list items, the budget and everything.
So did you hop on the project?
Oh, yeah. Hopped on the project. I've been there every day. And he is like, can I give you swag? I want you to wear our clothes. Like, it was like the total opposite that I thought was going to happen. I totally thought he was going to cuss me out and say, get out of here.
But, that is so interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't expect that reaction in that situation.
Yeah, I'm going to need that guy's contact information. Really, because I appreciate that you've been able to update that story after our project.
It was not Jeff.
Disclaimer.
It was much worse than that situation. But it was not good. But we've come out of it, and now he doesn't come and check on the project. He honestly, he's like, I've kind of like flown away because I trust that it's going to get done and you're going to handle it. But also, what also happened from it is the project manager has respect for me. So
Right.
the client, which is project manager report, so my employee is respecting me more. The client's respecting me more. And that's a situation that I think would be fine for a man to do. Like you would probably, I'm looking at Jeff right now. Jeff would probably be fine going to somebody and saying something like that. Whereas for a woman, you know, I'm like sweating walking into it, having to make sure my body language is on point and every word that I say is on point. Whereas a man might not have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I do that every day. So, I mean, I don't think that has to do with me being a man. It's
That's true.
mostly the people thinking that I'm a jerk. But, yeah.
Who says you're not?
Not a jerk?
No, just kidding.
No, I'm, yeah. I would say that I am direct and have a level of candor that people are typically uncomfortable with. But you don't, never abusive to people. Sometimes telling people the truth, can feel a little abusive though.
Right. But cussing somebody out and telling
Yeah,
them that you want them to be inconvenienced as much as you're inconvenienced, that's a little
No,
much.
that's
no.
another level of low.
No, I'm definitely not calling that guy to get drinks, and get leadership advice. But I am glad that you updated the story because I think probably about 6 months ago she was like, "Let me tell you this story about this guy."
No.
Yeah.
No, I was the one that was having to manage that.
Yeah.
Build out of the Nashville office. Good times.
It looks great though.
It does
It
look
does
great.
look really
Yeah.
good.
I have an
Pretty cool.
awesome office.
We do. So Elizabeth, I know you did a little drop in there about you have kids. You're obviously
yes.
a mom.
Yes.
A very successful businesswoman. You also
In
just
Nashville, 40 under 40.
Yeah, just won Nashville's 40 and 40. Congratulations
Thank
on that.
you.
Yeah. So when obviously you have a very successful life, looking at it from outside in, obviously, but when did that success begin for you? Can you pinpoint a time, or is it just collaborative over all the years and the effort you put in?
It's collaborative. I will say there are moments where it's jumped.
Yep.
So I've always worked hard and done well in school, won awards in college, got scholarships, and then was successful in business. It jumped when I went into the construction industry and then switched from construction to CBRE. Because then once I was in CBRE, I managed a group of about 4 or 5 people, and then I started getting more groups. So the way that we're broken up is in kind of territories and then project types. And so that was pretty organic, but it was definitely that moment. And I will say that wasn't just me. So we've talked a little bit about Jeff supporting, females. There are men that along the way have always lifted me up. So it's almost like you have to have a tribe of women that are saying, go girl, we support you. We think that you're doing awesome. But I can think of 3 in particular that have been above and said, no, you are important and you're coming with me, and almost like lifting me up. And one of them is my boss at CB, who I thought I was interviewing for a senior project manager job. And he said, no, you're hiring for the director job. And I think you can do it. I wouldn't have you here if I didn't think that you could do it. So it was almost like him believing that I could do it made me believe that I could do it. And then so I took the job. And that was probably the biggest shift because I became an owner as opposed to a provider.
Yeah, when I realized in my own careers, I would do things basically because I make ridiculous claims and then I feel obligated to follow through on them. And as I moved into different levels of leadership, I realized that not everybody's like that, right? And it's not just a gender thing, male versus female, but it is there is a significant difference. I'm sure there's studies out there that men will apply for a job when they're 60% qualified, and women want to be 110% qualified. And Carmen was sweating bullets about hosting the podcast, and she's been doing great. But I've always personally taken that and said, not everybody's going to make these ridiculous claims, but we need the people who have the potential, to be put in a position where they have to grow into it. So, my approach across the board is, if you're 100% sure you can do this job, then you're in the wrong job. I mean, you have to be constantly striving for something, or else what's the point? And that's not really life.
I actually remember that when I interviewed with you, Jeff, you offered me the job after I'd obviously gone through several other interviews, but I met you in person. You offered me the job, and I'm pretty sure my response was, "Are you sure? I don't think I'm qualified for this." And I remember you said, you have all the things that I can't teach you. I can teach you everything else. So it's definitely kind of what you're saying about your boss. I definitely got that from him. So this podcast is about knowing yourself. Elizabeth, do you have any advice for people on really how to get, down and dirty with yourself? How do you get to know who you are to be the best person that you can in order for you to be successful?
So I had a little bit of a self-discovery after I had my second child. So my life was very by the book in terms of growing up in the suburbs of Nashville, going to school, white collar family,
sounds familiar,
all the things, and got married very young, had 2 kids. I had a goal in terms of how much I wanted to make and certain things that I wanted to achieve, awards that I wanted to have, and I had them all done by 30. And I, had my second child. I was only going to have 2 kids. And so I was like, well, what do I do now? I have potentially 60 years left. Like, what am I going to do?
I've already done everything.
I've done everything that I wanted to do. And then I was like, who am I? What do I share with the world? And because then that's what it is. I want to be the best person that I can be for my kids, in particular, for my 2 boys. And so this was right before COVID happens, of course. It was like the January, February before COVID happens. And that's when I started my self-discovery, which was a terrible time to do that. And it was very much like I enjoy exercising, but I'm not the crazy person that's like at the gym all the time for a long, long time. I'm the one that's in the pool doing old lady water aerobics or just like chilling on the treadmill watching reels.
I fully support that.
Yes. And I like yoga and I like meditating and doing somewhat spiritual things, I guess, and reading and just making sure that I have time to do that self-discovery. And I'm also creative. I've always been, the art kid. I always did sports, but I was not good. I just did it because I liked being around people. And I made 2 goals. I said, I want my goal in life corporately to meet at least 100 people a week. And 10 of them to be
100 people a week?
Meet new people, yeah. So meet 100 people, meet with 100 people. That's
Have
pretty
you succeeded in that?
Kind of. COVID, obviously,
right.
That was not good. But, and then meet 10 new people. So I meet new clients all the time. So it's actually not that hard for me to do it. But in that, I've discovered, I want to have meaningful conversations. So it's not just I want to meet a bunch of people. I want to have the meaningful conversations, not high level, at the soccer field with the other moms. Like, I want to have deep conversations. And once I find the people that I can have those conversations with, I'm like, let's keep having these conversations, like the 2 of you. Yep. And then the other part of it was finding my joy. So there's always been this part of me that's just extra joyful, even as a kid. I was the kid that didn't really care about what other people thought of her. And almost to the point where people were probably like, she's not smart because she's so happy all the time. So it's finding my joy, being in my joy, living in my joy, but then also energetically bumping into other people to spread the joy. So when people leave being around me, I want them to feel the joy as they go out into the world. So those are my 2
I love that.
revelations from a couple of years ago. And that's really how I've been trying to live. So it's kind of like taking time for myself, going on trips with my friends and being around my kids to make sure that they see that. So, balancing work and life. So I'm at work and I'm working really hard. And then when I'm with my kids, I'm fully present. My cell phone's down. I'm not looking at my cell phone and really playing with them. We're doing Legos and magnet tiles or cars or whatever the boys want to do.
Tiles.
Aren't they so fun?
My son Jake turns 5 today.
Happy birthday.
And my whole experience with Jake and Alex is Jake builds these magnificent magnetile structures, and then Alex, my 2-year-old, comes up and just soccer kicks it.
Yeah.
and then I have to deal with the 5-year-old not wanting to beat up the 2-year-old. It's funny that you started finding yourself at the end of what your life goals were.
Right.
I had a similar experience, and I was, my life goals were ridiculously unattainable. And then I was 21. the youngest person ever hired in like America's most elite special operations unit. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And people are like, you can't do that. It's not going to happen. And I'm standing there like, all right, I'm here. Now what? Mm-hmm. And then I had like this, I was, I guess 26, and I, was now in this process of being medically retired. And it's like, I had achieved everything I wanted to. And now that thing that I achieved, I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
Now that really required, some time of self-discovery and figuring out what I, wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And that's kind of how I ended up here. All of that experience informed the type of organization I want to build, who I want to do things with, what the focus needs to be. Really came down to, I wanted to do cool stuff that made an impact with people that I liked. Mm-hmm. And I'm massively fortunate that I had that kind of achieving of all of the goals and then having that ripped away from me, because if it wasn't for that, I would probably be, a crusty old sergeant major at this point if I managed to make it through all the combat. Yeah. Which isn't a bad thing to be necessarily. But it's definitely a path that I'm thankful in retrospect that I found my way to being here today, in the studio with people like you, mm-hmm. And talking to a larger audience of people that, struggle on a day-to-day and need to find their way and who they are in order to take the next steps. Mm-hmm. The one thing you said, though, I have to key on. So if you go around and you act happy, then people think that you're not smart. Mm-hmm. People must think I'm really, really smart.
Probably so.
That's true. Well, you also are really smart. So
You are smart. Yeah.
But I definitely don't go around spreading joy. Mostly, I'm more like my 2-year-old going around kicking magnetiles over.
Which is okay too. You be who you are.
Yeah, you got to. If you can't build it again, right? What's the point?
I will add, it seems like when people do go through the self-discovery, the things that they realize about themselves are the odd things. So me being creative or me meditating, those are kind of things that people generally don't talk about, Yeah. And or people that like to work on cars or paint. They're almost like these things that people do solo. But why don't we talk about them? You're excited about it. You're passionate about it. I find joy in knowing what you're passionate about. So why don't we talk about that?
I think it's also normalized being different and being who you are, right? Most people are trying to fit into this society and what society tells you who you should be, how you should walk, how you should talk, what you should be interested in, right? It's
that you should wear shoes, just generally.
Shoes. She's in shoes.
I know, I am in shoes. I've had them on and off all day. But it's just that concept of being able to be who you are and mm-hmm. discuss what fills you with joy. What bothers you. You don't have to be a walking box of sunshine, Jeff.
Yeah.
And we relate great to each other, right?
Yeah. It works out fantastically.
It does.
And I'm like a black hole and just sucks in light.
Sucks in the light.
Yeah. Won't let any escape.
Oh, man. Well, this was fun. Do you guys have anything else to add before we wrap it up?
No, I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule, and berating CEOs for, their behavior with your project managers. And it was a pleasure. Hopefully, we'll have you back on before too long.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll talk more.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers.